The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Harris estate, flooding the marble floor with a golden glow. Isabella Smith knelt quietly in the grand living room, her hands steady as she polished the crystal vases aligned on the oak cabinet. She had been in this house for 4 months, long enough to memorize every corner, but still careful enough to move with humility, as if each step could betray her presence. The mansion carried an air of silence, broken only by the soft rhythm of her cloth against the glass. It was precisely 8 o'clock when the sound of engines broke the calm. Isabella paused, lifting her eyes toward the window. Through the sheer curtains, she saw the long driveway fill with one luxury car after another, sleek black sedans, a crimson convertible, a silver SUV that gleamed like a blade. The doors opened, releasing women draped in elegance, silk scarves fluttering, high heels striking the stone path, handbags worth more than Isabella's yearly wage clutched against manicured fingers. Lucas Harris stood at the top of the staircase, his small hands gripping the railing. His wide brown eyes glistened with a mixture of curiosity and unease. At 8 years old, he had been told little, but he understood enough. These strangers had come for him, or rather, for the place beside him that his mother had once held. His father had explained in gentle terms that one day, Lucas would choose who might become his new mother. Today was the beginning of that strange search. The women stepped inside with the confidence of royalty entering their court. Their perfumes mingled in the air, notes of jasmine, rose, and something sharper, commanding. Isabella straightened, lowering her gaze as they passed, reminding herself that she was invisible in this world. Invisible, until a mistake drew eyes her way. That mistake came swiftly. As she gathered the empty breakfast tray from the coffee table, her wrist brushed against a crystal glass. The fragile piece tumbled, shattering against the marble in a burst of sharp fragments. Silence dropped like a curtain. All eyes turned toward her. Beatrice Collins, the tallest of the women, stepped forward. Her hair was perfectly coiled, her suit tailored to perfection, her mouth a sharp line of disdain. "Really," she said, her voice cutting through the hush. "Is this the standard of staff employed here? Breaking crystal at 8 in the morning." Isabella's cheeks burned as she knelt to pick up the shards. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It won't happen again." Beatrice's lips curved into a smile that was anything but kind. "Oh, I doubt that. People like you always make the same mistakes." The other women exchanged amused glances, a silent pact forming. One by one, they dismissed Isabella with the same cold indifference, treating her as though she were furniture in the grand room. Lucas's small voice broke the tension. "Leave her alone," he said, his words trembling but firm. She didn't mean to. Beatrice tilted her head toward him, softening her expression in a calculated instant. "Oh, darling, we're only trying to keep things proper for you. A boy like you deserves perfection." Lucas frowned, but before he could speak again, his father entered. Leonard Harris, tall and distinguished, carried the weight of wealth and grief in equal measure. He welcomed the guests with gracious words, introducing them formally one by one. Beatrice Collins, Victoria Blake, Regina Davis, Cassandra Miller, Sylvia Matthews. Each woman smiled with practiced charm, each already envisioning her role in this strange competition. Yet as Leonard guided them toward the sunlit garden for introductions, Lucas's attention drifted back to Isabella. She had finished cleaning the shards, her hands slightly trembling, her face lowered. And when she looked up at him, offering the smallest of smiles to reassure him, Lucas felt a warmth that none of the elegant women had managed to stir. For the first time that morning, he smiled back. The Harris mansion had always been filled with whispers, some from its long hallways, others from the memories its walls carried. That morning, as the women settled into their assigned rooms, Isabella carried fresh linens through the corridors, her footsteps soft against the polished floors. She tried to stay invisible, but her mind wandered. Every corner of this house reminded her of beginnings she never had. Isabella's childhood had been far from marble floors and chandeliers. Raised in a small town by a mother who worked endless shifts at a bakery, she had learned early the value of humility and endurance. Books borrowed from a dusty library had been her treasures, teaching her about worlds far beyond her reach. When her mother passed 2 years ago, Isabella's life became a series of bus rides, odd jobs, and quiet prayers for something better. The Harris estate was not her dream, but it was stability, until now. Lucas followed her into the hallway, dragging his small toy car along the wall. "They don't smile like you do," he murmured. His eyes lifted to hers, uncertain but searching. "Do you think one of them can be my mom?" The question pierced her heart. She crouched down, smoothing a stray curl from his forehead. "A mother is someone who makes you feel safe, Lucas. Someone who listens, even when you're quiet." She paused, aware that her words carried a weight she should not bear. "You'll know it here." She tapped lightly against his chest. From the doorway nearby, Regina Davis observed them, her sharp eyes narrowing. She stepped forward, her voice honeyed with false warmth. "Lucas, darling, would you like to see the chess set your father brought back from Rome? I could teach you strategy." She extended her hand with practiced grace. Lucas hesitated, glancing back at Isabella. When he finally moved toward Regina, it was without enthusiasm. Isabella lowered her gaze, knowing her presence was already drawing suspicion. She slipped away before Regina's calculating smile could cut deeper. That evening, Leonard watched his son from across the dinner table. Lucas laughed only once, when Isabella passed by carrying dessert and playfully winked at him. The 5 women, adorned in jewels and ambition, noticed the exchange. Beneath the glitter of candlelight, envy began to brew. By the 3rd day, the competition had found its rhythm. Each morning, the women showcased their talents as though on stage. Victoria Blake arranged a fashion corner in the garden, parading gowns from Paris. Sylvia Matthews sketched elaborate designs for a playhouse she promised to build for Lucas. Cassandra Miller lined up an assortment of skincare products, assuring Leonard that even his son's future complexion could be perfected. Beatrice Collins, as always, commanded attention with flawless speeches about tradition, status, and dignity. Isabella, in contrast, carried mops and baskets. Yet it was during lunch that the first real confrontation erupted. Lucas pushed aside the expensive pastries brought by Victoria and reached instead for the simple sandwich Isabella had prepared for herself. She hesitated, but he tugged her sleeve. "Please, just half." The room fell silent as the boy bit into the sandwich, grinning wide. "It's better than all that fancy stuff." His declaration was innocent, but its echo was devastating. Beatrice's eyes flared. "Is this what you're teaching him? That a servant's scraps are better than a curated meal?" Leonard's brow furrowed, but before he could intervene, Isabella spoke softly. "It wasn't meant for him, ma'am. But if he's happy, then it's enough." Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Enough? Happiness doesn't come from crumbs. It comes from Paris runways, from private jets, from living where the world admires you." Lucas crossed his arms. "I don't care about jets. I just want her to stay." He pointed at Isabella, his small voice louder than any of theirs. The women exchanged glances, their polished smiles cracking. A line had been drawn. Later that night, in the solitude of her small quarters, Isabella wept quietly. Not from shame, but from the fear of what her closeness to Lucas might unleash. In the grand rooms of the mansion, alliances were already forming. The socialites whispered of putting her in her place. And so, the silent war began. The 4th morning carried a tension that clung to the walls like humidity. Isabella entered the library to dust the shelves, but the voices that reached her ears made her freeze. Beatrice and Regina sat near the fireplace, their tones low but sharp. "She's distracting the boy," Regina muttered, sipping her espresso. "If he keeps clinging to her, none of us stand a chance." Beatrice's reply was cold steel. "Then we make sure she doesn't last the month." Leonard might tolerate her presence, but reputations crumble quickly. One rumor, one misstep, and she's gone. Isabella's pulse quickened. She stepped back, but the creak of the wooden floor betrayed her. Both women turned. Their smiles were polite, yet venom flickered beneath. "Good morning, Isabella," Beatrice said smoothly. "Do be careful. These floors are terribly old." Her meaning was clear. One slip could end everything. Later that day, Lucas invited Isabella to join him in the garden for a simple picnic. She brought apples, bread, and water, sitting with him beneath the sprawling oak. His laughter rang bright as they tossed crumbs to the birds. But from the mansion's balcony, for pairs of eyes watched, their envy sharpening into resolve. When Leonard appeared, curious at the sight, he caught something unexpected, a glow in his son's face that he had not seen since his wife's passing. For a brief moment, Leonard's gaze lingered on Isabella, his thoughts clouded with questions he dared not yet voice. And in that fragile pause, the future of the Harris estate shifted course. The grand Harris dining room became a battlefield without weapons. Over breakfast, the five women measured one another with guarded glances, their smiles polished yet edged with quiet hostility. Each of them had come to win, but Isabella's unintentional presence had reshaped the contest. She was not a candidate, not even considered worthy of the competition, and yet Lucas's affection for her grew daily. That alone threatened them all. Beatrice took her role as leader. Her words were sharp, delivered with the conviction of a diplomat. If we do not act collectively, we will lose to someone who doesn't even belong in this house. Her eyes swept the table, landing on each woman in turn. Leonard can be blinded by sentiment. Lucas is a child. We must ensure their influence is limited. Victoria stirred her cappuccino slowly, her lips curling. And how do you suggest we limit a maid? Throwing tantrums won't make Leonard listen. We need subtlety. A story, perhaps. Regina leaned back in her chair, her lawyer's mind already calculating. Rumors are stronger than truth. If society believes she has ulterior motives, Leonard will be forced to dismiss her. We can build something that appears undeniable. Sylvia, less confrontational, hesitated before speaking. Are we not going too far? She's only a cleaner. Lucas will grow bored soon enough. Beatrice's gaze sliced through her. Children are not so easily bored when they feel understood. That woman understands him. That makes her dangerous. By evening, an unspoken alliance had formed. The five women were not united in friendship, but in rivalry against a common obstacle. Their weapons would be words, manipulation, and appearances. And Isabella, unaware of the storm gathering around her, continued folding sheets in the servants' wing, humming softly to herself. Yet divisions among the women already showed. Cassie Miller, though part of the pact, kept her distance. A dermatologist by trade, she prided herself on perfection. Yet in her heart, she sensed that what Isabella offered Lucas could not be manufactured in clinics or boutiques. She remained silent, choosing observation over action. In the shadows of luxury, the first cracks of betrayal began to form. A week into the competition, Leonard noticed small irregularities. Floors that Isabella had polished were mysteriously soiled again within minutes. Bottles of cleaning solution disappeared only to be found hidden in drawers. Expensive vases toppled, and blame was silently shifted toward her. Though Isabella worked tirelessly, whispers of incompetence began to surface. The timing was too precise, too orchestrated. Leonard's instincts, sharpened by years of business dealings, stirred with suspicion. Late one night, he walked through the halls, pausing at the faint sound of voices. Near the terrace, he heard Victoria and Regina speaking in hushed tones. "She'll be gone before the month ends," Victoria whispered. "The tabloids are hungry for scandal. A headline about a maid seducing a millionaire? They'll devour it. And Leonard will be forced to choose among us," Regina added. "No child dictates the reputation of a Harris." Leonard stepped back silently, a cold realization settling in. They were plotting, not against him, but against Isabella. He thought of the quiet girl who smiled when no one watched, who listened patiently to Lucas's endless stories. He thought of his son's laughter in her company. And suddenly, the competition itself felt like a charade, a grotesque display where love was weighed against ambition. The next morning, Leonard called a discreet security team. "Install cameras in the common rooms," he ordered. "Do it quietly. I want to know what truly happens in my house." Meanwhile, Isabella noticed the shift in atmosphere. The women's kindness grew sharper, their remarks dripping with double meanings. She kept her silence, though her chest tightened with every cruel glance. It was Lucas who broke through her fear, tugging at her sleeve in the garden. "Don't let them make you sad," he whispered. "I know you're the only one who cares about me for real." Isabella hugged him, but her heart ached. She wondered how long she could endure the hostility. She had come here to work, not to be part of a war. What she didn't know was that the war had already escalated beyond whispers, and Leonard now held the first thread of truth. The following week marked a turning point. The women, emboldened by their pact, staged small humiliations meant to weaken Isabella further. One morning, Sylvia deliberately spilled red wine on the freshly polished floor, then summoned Leonard with feigned outrage. "She left it in this state. Can you imagine the carelessness? But the cameras told another story. Leonard watched from his study as the recording unfolded, Sylvia glancing around, smirking, and tipping her glass with theatrical precision. The evidence was clear. His jaw tightened, fury mixing with grim satisfaction. At last, he had proof. Isabella, however, felt only despair. She overheard guests whispering in the hallway. Rumors that she had eyes for Leonard, that she was manipulating his son to secure wealth. The cruelty stung, her integrity reduced to gossip. That night she sat alone, clutching a letter she nearly wrote to resign. Her hand trembled, her tears blotting the paper. But she could not abandon Lucas. The boy needed her, even if the world despised her. In the grand salon, Beatrice raised a glass during a private gathering of the women. To victory, she toasted. By month's end, she will be forgotten, and one of us will rise. Yet fate had shifted. Leonard entered silently, his expression unreadable. He spoke few words, but they chilled the air. Enjoy your games while you can. Not all masks survive the light. The women exchanged glances, uncertain if he knew, if he suspected. But Leonard's composure remained intact, his plan concealed. He resolved that night to reveal everything, but at the right moment, before the entire world. And so, the point of no return had been crossed. The Harris mansion was no longer a stage for shallow courtship. It had become a battlefield where truth and deception clashed, and where one quiet woman stood unknowingly at the heart of it all. The morning after Leonard's cryptic warning, the atmosphere inside the Harris mansion was taut as a drawn bow. The socialites carried themselves with forced confidence, but unease flickered beneath their polished facades. For Isabella, however, the consequences of their schemes had already begun to spill beyond the estate walls. At the market near her modest apartment, whispers trailed her like shadows. A neighbor avoided her eyes, another muttered, "That's the girl trying to snare Mr. Harris." Even strangers' stares grew sharp, poisoned by rumors. Isabella returned to the mansion with her shoulders heavy, fear curling in her chest. For the first time since arriving, she considered leaving. Lucas noticed immediately. At lunch, he reached across the table, his small hand brushing hers. "Why don't you smile today?" he asked softly. His words broke her heart. She forced a grin, whispering, "I'm just tired." But he frowned, sensing the truth. Meanwhile, Leonard continued reviewing the hidden camera footage. Each recording revealed another layer of cruelty. Wine deliberately spilled, dust scattered after Isabella cleaned, possessions hidden and then found, with accusations against her. Leonard's chest burned with indignation. He had invited these women to his home, believing one might bring warmth back into his son's life. Instead, they brought poison. Yet consequences reached the conspirators too. Cassie Miller, though complicit by silence, began feeling the weight of guilt. Watching Lucas defend Isabella with innocent loyalty unsettled her. One evening, she confessed quietly to Sylvia, "He'll never love us like he loves her. And maybe he shouldn't." Sylvia, though envious, did not reply. Her conscience wavered. But Beatrice noticed their hesitation and tightened her grip. "Do not falter," she snapped. "We are too close to victory. Leonard may suspect, but he has no proof that society will believe. Isabella will fall." What none of them realized was that Leonard had already begun preparing the battlefield. The unexpected consequences of their cruelty were no longer Isabella's alone. They were about to face them as well. It was late evening when Leonard summoned Isabella to his study. She entered hesitantly, her apron still dusted with flour from preparing Lucas's snack. Leonard stood by the fireplace, his face lit by the flames, holding a small remote control. "I want you to see something," he said quietly. With a click, the television screen on the wall flickered alive, displaying grainy black and white footage. Isabella's breath caught as she watched Sylvia deliberately overturn a vase she had cleaned. The image shifted, Regina whispering to Victoria, plotting in corners. Then Beatrice's cold laughter as she declared Isabella replaceable. Tears stung her eyes. Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because you must know the truth," Leonard replied. His voice was steady, though anger trembled beneath. "They are not here for Lucas, nor for me. They are here for status, wealth, power, and they see you as a threat." Isabella shook her head, overwhelmed. "I never wanted any of this. I only wanted to work, to help." Leonard's gaze softened. "And yet, You've given Lucas something none of them could, joy. That alone makes you dangerous to them. She wanted to protest, but her heart pounded. The truth lay heavy. The war was not about wealth or status alone. It was about love, real and unmanufactured. Outside the study, Lucas pressed his ear to the door, catching fragments of their voices. He did not understand it all, but he understood enough. They were against Isabella. His chest swelled with determination. If no one else would fight for her, then he would. Later that night, Beatrice convened the women in the grand salon. The maid grows too close to both father and son. Tomorrow, we strike harder. We will unveil her secrets. She placed a folder on the table, filled with forged documents prepared by the investigator she had hired. Accusations of theft, fabricated debts, even claims of a past arrest. The buried truths of their cruelty now collided with the lies they manufactured. And Leonard, holding the recordings, prepared to let it all rise to the surface at once. The Harris estate shimmered with anticipation. Leonard had announced a grand evening gala, a gathering of family, friends, and the press, under the guise of allowing Lucas to declare his choice. Invitations spread quickly through the social elite. The event promised glamour, gossip, and a decisive conclusion to the unusual competition. The women, certain of victory, prepared themselves with extravagant gowns and rehearsed speeches of gratitude. Beatrice in particular envisioned her triumph, imagining headlines that crowned her the new Mrs. Harris. Yet beneath her certainty lurked the investigator's documents, waiting to be revealed at the perfect moment to destroy Isabella completely. Isabella, however, prepared nothing. She worked quietly, polishing silverware for the banquet, folding napkins with trembling hands. Leonard had told her only, "Trust me. Do not leave, no matter what happens." His tone carried a gravity that unsettled her. Lucas clung to her side more than usual. "You'll be there tomorrow, won't you?" he asked. His eyes were wide, fragile with fear. She knelt to meet him at eye level. "Yes, I'll be there." In the privacy of his study, Leonard aligned every piece of evidence. The videos, audio recordings, transcripts. He rehearsed his words carefully. The confrontation would not be quiet. It would be explosive. He knew reputations would shatter, alliances would crumble. But he also knew the truth had to be seen by all, not whispered behind doors. The night before the gala, Isabella lay awake, her heart pounding with dread. She feared humiliation, feared being cast out before a crowd. Yet deeper still, she feared losing the boy who had become her anchor. Lucas had slipped into her room earlier, whispering, "Don't let them win." His trust gave her courage. The stage was set. The guests were coming. And the Harris mansion prepared itself for the night that would expose everything. The Harris mansion glittered under chandeliers as guests arrived, the air thick with perfume and expectation. Journalists, relatives, and society's elite filled the grand hall, eager to witness the extraordinary finale of Leonard Harris's unusual competition. Cameras flashed, champagne glasses clinked, and whispers of speculation rippled through the crowd. The 5 women stood poised at the center of attention, gowns flowing like banners of conquest. Beatrice glowed with smug confidence, clutching the forged documents against her jeweled clutch. Regina's smile was polished. Victoria posed for the photographers. Cassie hid unease behind her practiced charm, and Sylvia smoothed her dress with trembling hands. Isabella remained in the background, near the serving staff. Her plain dress contrasted sharply with the dazzling spectacle, but her presence drew the quiet eyes of Lucas, who refused to leave her side. He clutched her hand, ignoring the murmurs of disapproval from the assembled guests. When Leonard entered, silence followed. He looked regal, his tailored suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. He raised a hand, commanding the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we gather to honor a promise. 30 days of companionship, 30 days of trials. And tonight, my son will declare his choice." Excitement surged through the hall. The women straightened, smiles flashing. Beatrice stepped slightly forward, certain victory lay in her grasp. But before she could speak, Leonard gestured toward the screen behind him. "Yet before we make such a choice, truth must be seen." The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. And then, evidence unfolded. The guests watched as Sylvia deliberately spilled wine, as Regina whispered conspiracies, as Victoria planted lies, as Beatrice sneered at Isabella with venom. Each recording struck like a hammer, shattering the facade of elegance. Gasps filled the hall, whispers turning into horrified murmurs. Beatrice shouted, "This is manipulation. Lies. She staged this." Leonard's voice cut through her protest. "The cameras do not lie. Every act, every word, has been recorded." He turned slowly, his gaze sweeping the crowd. These women sought not love, not family, but power. And they conspired to destroy the only person who has brought joy to my son since his mother's passing. The hall erupted in outrage. Reputations cracked before everyone's eyes. Beatrice's confident smile twisted into fury. Regina paled. Victoria's glamour faded under humiliation. Sylvia wept quietly, and Cassie lowered her eyes, too ashamed to speak. Then, in the stunned silence, Lucas's small voice carried across the hall. "I don't want any of them," he declared, his grip tightening on Isabella's hand. "I want her. She's the only one who makes me happy. She's the only one who feels like a mom." The child's words silenced every whisper. The truth, pure and unpolished, shone brighter than chandeliers. Leonard stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Isabella. His voice softened, vulnerable for the first time in years. "And I must confess, so do I." He faced the crowd, his voice clear. "Tonight, I do not announce a fiancé from among the candidates. Tonight, I ask Isabella Smith, the woman my son and I love, to stand beside us." Gasps turned to applause, murmurs to cheers. Cameras flashed wildly. And in that moment, everything changed. The aftermath was swift and merciless. The 5 women, once paragons of high society, found themselves disgraced. Contracts dissolved. Invitations vanished. Friends turned cold. Newspapers the next morning bore damning headlines. Sabotage at the Harris estate. Socialites exposed in scandal. Truth triumphs over deception. Their reigns of glamour ended in silence and shame. For Isabella, life transformed overnight. Once invisible, she became the center of a story that resonated far beyond the mansion's gates. Some called her a Cinderella, others a symbol of humility, triumphing over arrogance. Yet Isabella herself sought no spotlight. What mattered was Lucas's laughter, Leonard's steady presence, and the strange, tender family they had begun to form. Weeks later, Leonard proposed not in a ballroom, but in the quiet garden where Isabella once shared bread and apples with Lucas. With only the boy as witness, Leonard knelt, his voice trembling with sincerity. "You saved us both," he said. "Will you let us save you too?" She answered with tears and a nod, Lucas throwing his arms around them in joy. Their wedding followed months later. Unlike the grandeur of the Harris estate, it was a simple ceremony beneath the oak tree. Close friends gathered, Lucas proudly serving as page boy. Laughter replaced whispers, love replaced rivalry. For the first time in years, Leonard felt whole again. Time moved gently after that. The estate no longer echoed with cold ambition, but with warmth. Isabella's presence softened its edges, filling rooms with kindness. And when Helena, their daughter, was born, the circle of love closed fully. Lucas held his baby sister with awe, declaring to anyone who would listen, "Now our family is perfect." In the end, the Harris story was not one of wealth or prestige, but of truth discovered in the unlikeliest of places. Love had emerged not from luxury or calculated charm, but from patience, simplicity, and a heart that asked for nothing in return. And so, under the Californian sun, with laughter drifting through the gardens of the Harris estate, the family lived not as symbols of class, but as proof that genuine love was the rarest treasure of all. If you made it this far, leave us a comment telling us where you're watching from today and what you thought of the story. If you can, share this video with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to receive new videos. A big hug, and see you tomorrow.